The ringing of my phone shattered the midnight silence. It was my son, an active FBI agent. "Dad, lock every single door right now." His voice was a tense whisper. "Kill all the lights and get down to the basement immediately. Whatever you do, do not say a word to your son-in-law." "Michael, you're terrifying me," I stammered, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Just do it, Dad, please." I obeyed without another question. Hiding in the pitch-black workshop, peering through the small basement window, I saw something that froze my blood. Before continuing, subscribe to this channel and write in the comments what time it is in your region right now. My name is Arthur Pendleton. I'm 67 years old, living in the quiet, historic neighborhood of Chestnut Hill in Philadelphia. I spent 38 years of my life as a structural fire inspector before finally hanging up my heavy canvas coat and badge. I always believed the most lethal dangers were found inside burning warehouses and crumbling structures. It turns out, the most devastating fire can ignite right inside your own home. Let me tell you about my daughter, Melissa. She is 42 years old and used to be my little girl, the one who would sprint across the lawn to greet me after every grueling shift. We would sit on the front porch for hours, and she would tell me all about her day, her wild dreams, and her childhood fears. That beautiful dynamic existed long before David Vance walked into her life 3 years ago. He was a charming guy, I will give him that much. He claimed to be a high-end real estate consultant. He was a smooth talker, the exact kind of salesman who could sell a block of ice to a man already freezing to death in a blizzard. When they got married 2 years back, I was genuinely thrilled for her. Every father wants his daughter to be deeply loved and fiercely protected. But almost immediately after the wedding, a subtle shift occurred. Melissa's bright laugh grew quieter. Her weekend visits became noticeably shorter. And her eyes, they just stopped meeting mine with that same familiar warmth. Then came the proposal last February. "Dad, we want to move in with you," Melissa said softly over coffee at my worn kitchen table. "Just temporarily, I promise. David is between massive projects and our apartment lease is ending. Plus, you're getting older. We could really help you around the big house." I should have said no right then and there. I should have trusted my gut. It was the exact same survival instinct that had kept me alive in countless blazing, collapsing structures over my long career. Instead, I said yes, simply because she was my daughter and I desperately wanted to believe she still cared about her old man. That was my first monumental mistake. David moved in and acted like his name was already on the deed. During the very first week, he installed high-tech security cameras. "Strictly for your safety, Arthur," he said, flashing that heavily practiced, unsettling smile. "You're living alone in a massive house. You just can't be too careful these days." Then came his aggressive offers for financial help. He strongly suggested consolidating my retirement accounts and streamlining my monthly bills. "I work with big money every single day, Arthur. Let me take this heavy burden off your aging shoulders." Slowly, my old friends started calling less, and when they did call, David was always hovering nearby like a vulture. "Arthur's resting," he would say, smoothly plucking the phone right out of my hand. "He'll call you back tomorrow." I never did. Eventually, my friends just stopped trying to reach me. The cameras seemed to multiply overnight. The living room, the main hallways, the kitchen, they were everywhere. "Just upgrading the system," David explained smoothly. But my inspector's eye noticed a glaring anomaly. There were no cameras inside their bedroom. And crucially, there were no cameras down in the basement where I kept my beloved antique clock restoration workshop. Interesting strategic choices. Melissa blindly went along with everything he did. "Dad, you really need to take it easy," she would say whenever I dared to question David's actions. "You're not as young and spry as you used to be. Just let us help." Let us help. That toxic phrase quickly became their favorite weapon against my independence. My son Michael, the one who actually gave a damn about me, tried reaching out multiple times. Michael is 44 and works for the FBI in their complex financial crimes division. He was always a brilliant, observant kid. He called one chilly evening in January, saying he wanted to come over for a visit. David answered my phone before I could reach it. "Michael, oh, Arthur's sleeping early these days. Doctor's strict orders, you know. I'll definitely have him call you back." I wasn't sleeping. I was sitting barely 10 feet away, watching David lie to my son through his perfect, bleached white teeth. After David hung up the phone, I challenged him. "Hi, didn't you let me talk to Michael?" "You really need your rest, Arthur. Michael works crazy, demanding hours anyway. He'd just end up worrying you with his intense work stress." "He's my son, David, and you have enough stress just managing your own declining health," Melissa chimed in from the doorway, taking her husband's side without hesitation. "David is right, Dad. You don't need Michael's heavy FBI drama in your peaceful life." That is the exact moment I started truly noticing the sinister pattern. They weren't helping me at all. They were systematically isolating me. Every minor decision went through them. Every incoming phone call was filtered through David's strict control. My own cherished home had morphed into a maximum security prison with invisible, suffocating bars. But I am not a fool. Spending 38 years investigating catastrophic fire scenes teaches you how to spot hidden patterns, to immediately see what doesn't fit the natural narrative. And none of this fit. But I played along. I flawlessly acted the part of the grateful father, the doddering, fragile old man who desperately needed their constant protection. Because if there is one vital lesson that fighting fires taught me, it is the absolute necessity of patience. You never rush into a burning building blind. You stand back, you assess the structural integrity, you formulate a solid plan, and then, and only then, you act. The night my entire world changed was Valentine's Day, February 14th. The digital clock on my nightstand glowed 12:17 a.m. when my cell phone abruptly buzzed. David and Melissa were fast asleep, or at least I assumed they were. I grabbed the phone frantically and saw Michael's name flashing on the screen. "Hello," I whispered into the receiver. "Dad, listen to me very carefully." Michael's voice was incredibly tight and urgent. This was absolutely not the casual tone of a late-night check-in. "Right now, I need you to lock all your doors and windows. Turn off every single light in the house. Then get down to the basement, straight into your workshop. Do not come out for any reason. And Dad, whatever you do, do not tell David I called you." My heart hammered a frantic rhythm. "Michael, you're really scaring me." "Just do it, Dad, please trust me." The line went dead with a soft click. I sat there swallowed by the darkness, my phone clutched tightly in my trembling hand. Michael was a federal agent. He wouldn't call me at midnight just to play some kind of elaborate prank. Something was horribly wrong. Something was dangerously off. I slipped out of my warm bed and moved silently through my house like a phantom. Every natural instinct screamed at me to turn on the lights, to rush down the hall and check on Melissa and David. But I trusted Michael implicitly. After enduring months of forced isolation, psychological manipulation, and highly controlled captivity, my son's voice was the very first thing that felt genuinely true. I checked the heavy front door, locked securely. I checked the back door, locked tight. I ensured every window was secure. Then I killed the interior lights one by one until my beloved home sat in complete and total darkness. Pausing outside Melissa's bedroom door, I strained to listen. I heard absolutely nothing. Either they were in a remarkably deep sleep, or they were lying awake in the pitch black, listening just as intently as I was. The wooden basement stairs creaked softly under my weight. I froze like a statue with each minor sound, waited for what felt like an eternity, and then continued my descent. My clock restoration workshop sat in the farthest, darkest corner, completely surrounded by my prized collection of antique clocks. There were 23 of them in total, each one painstakingly restored with my own 2 hands over the course of 15 years. The synchronized ticking, filled the heavy silence like a dozen tiny, mechanical heartbeats. I settled into my worn leather work chair, surrounded by tiny springs, brass gears, and the comforting, familiar scent of machine oil. The small, ground-level window offered a very narrow but clear view of my concrete driveway and the front walkway. Whatever Michael was so terrified of, I would see it coming from here. The minutes crawled by agonizingly. My wristwatch showed 12:43 a.m., then 1:00 a.m., still nothing. Then at exactly 1:15 a.m. I heard it, heavy footsteps moving directly above me. David's voice, slightly muffled through the thick floorboards. He was on his cell phone. "Yeah, he's fast asleep. Everything is perfectly quiet. Nobody is going to interrupt us tonight." A brief pause. "Come on over. Give it exactly 30 minutes. Park down the street and keep your headlights completely off." My blood instantly turned to ice in my veins. I pressed my back flat against the freezing concrete basement wall, barely daring to draw a breath. The clocks ticked relentlessly around me, marking time that I desperately wished I could freeze. Above me, David's heavy foot. Steps moved methodically through the house. I heard him pause directly outside my bedroom door, checking on me, ensuring the naive old man was still safely tucked away like a good little compliant prisoner. The workshop window sat just an inch above ground level, offering a very narrow, horizontal slice of the outside world. I quickly positioned myself in the absolute darkest corner of the room, a spot where I could see outside clearly but remain entirely invisible from the yard. My heart pounded so violently against my ribs that I was terrified David might actually hear it echoing through the floorboards. I used to sit in this exact same spot with Melissa when she was just 8 years old. She would perch on the edge of my wooden workbench, her little legs swinging happily, watching in sheer fascination as I dismantled intricate pocket watches. "How do you know which tiny piece goes where, Daddy?" she would ask, her big eyes wide with innocent wonder. "Patience, my princess," I would tell her with a smile. "Every single piece has its specific place. You just have to pay close attention and learn the hidden patterns." She would stay down there for hours, asking a million questions, eagerly handing me tiny brass screws and coiled springs. Sometimes she would fall fast asleep on the lumpy old couch I kept down here, and I would gently carry her all the way upstairs, tucking her safely into her bed. Those were the beautiful days. Those were the golden days when my daughter truly loved me for who I was, not for what my bank accounts held. That bittersweet memory violently shattered when I finally saw them. It was 1:20 a.m. Two dark cars rolled slowly up my quiet residential street, their headlights completely killed. They moved like great white sharks gliding through dark, murky water, smooth, totally silent, and deeply predatory. Both vehicles parked parallel at my curb. 3 large men emerged, entirely dressed in dark, non-reflective clothing. There were no visible faces, no easily identifying features, just menacing shadows moving with chilling purpose. David casually opened my front door before they even had a chance to knock. Through the narrow basement window, I watched them file silently into my home. My home. The sacred place where I had proudly raised 2 wonderful children, where my late wife had died peacefully in our shared bed, where absolutely every room held 4 decades of irreplaceable memories. And now, these dangerous strangers strolled through my front door like they held the deed. I couldn't hear their muffled conversation, but I could clearly see their large shadows moving rapidly across the drawn living room curtains. Then, they disappeared from my limited view, heading much deeper into the house, moving directly toward my private study, toward my hidden safe. My aging hands involuntarily clenched into tight fists. The safe. That is exactly what this midnight invasion was all about. But how on earth did David know my combination? I had never written those numbers down anywhere. I had never told a single living soul except for Melissa, just last year when she first moved in. "Dad, what if something terrible happens to you? What if there's a huge medical emergency and we urgently need your important documents? She had sounded so incredibly reasonable, so deeply concerned, so undeniably convincing. I had foolishly given her the private combination. 6 simple numbers that I had used faithfully for 20 years, the exact month and day my late wife and I got married. I had literally handed my own daughter the master keys to my entire life, and she had turned around and delivered them straight to this venomous snake she had married. The wait felt absolutely eternal. My calf muscles cramped painfully. My lower back ached with a dull fire, but I didn't dare move a single inch. I couldn't move. Because if they somehow figured out I was awake, if they even suspected I had witnessed this intrusion, I honestly didn't know what violence would follow. I thought back to the other few times in my life I had trusted the wrong people. During my second year as a rookie fire inspector, I had officially cleared a large textile warehouse that my gut instinct screamed was highly suspicious. Exactly 2 weeks later, it burned straight to the ground in an incredibly obvious arson for insurance scheme. The shady owner had smiled warmly at me, shaken my hand firmly, looked me dead in the eyes, and lied straight to my face. I had been much younger back then, far more naive to human greed. I aggressively learned from that painful mistake. Clearly, I hadn't learned quite enough. At exactly 1:47 a.m., the intruders finally emerged. I pressed my face closer to the dirty window glass, straining my aging eyes to see. One of the large men carried a thick manila envelope. It looked completely stuffed. David held something else, something much smaller. They spoke very briefly right at the front door, engaging in some kind of swift exchange. The large man casually handed David a crisp white envelope. It was payment. It was instructions. It was solid proof of ultimate betrayal bound in crisp, unmarked bills. Then just like that, they were gone. The car engines purred to life, still lacking headlights, and they seamlessly melted back into the suffocating night. I waited in the dark, slowly counting all the way to 200. I listened carefully to David's heavy footsteps overhead as he casually moved through my house, double-checking the windows, loudly resetting the deadbolts, perfectly playing the role of the highly concerned, protective son-in-law guarding dear old Arthur from the big, dangerous world outside. Eventually, his footsteps retreated back to Melissa's bedroom. The door clicked closed, and a heavy silence fell, broken only by my ticking clocks and my own ragged, uneven breathing. I sat frozen in that cold basement until the dawn finally broke, watching the sky slowly transform from pitch black to dull gray, and finally to a pale, washed-out blue. I sat there thinking, meticulously planning and painfully remembering. I remembered Melissa at 10 years old, proudly bringing me charred, burnt pancakes on Father's Day, beaming with joy. I remembered Melissa at 16, violently sobbing on this very basement couch after her first devastating heartbreak, while I held her tight and promised her the world would be okay again. I remembered Melissa at 25, standing at her mother's rainy funeral, gripping my hand with such frantic strength I honestly thought she might break my fingers. When exactly did that sweet girl completely disappear? When did she fully transform into someone who would heartlessly betray her own devoted father? Or had she always been entirely capable of this profound cruelty, and my blind, fatherly love just refused to let me see it? The absolute hardest truth hit me with the devastating force of a collapsing steel beam. Maybe she hadn't changed at all. Maybe I had just loved her far too much to ever notice what she truly was. Around 6:00 a.m., I finally heard movement upstairs. Normal, everyday morning sounds. Running water, the rhythmic drip of coffee brewing. The flawless performance of daily normalcy resuming right on its strict schedule. I climbed the wooden basement stairs incredibly slowly, every stiff joint in my body loudly protesting. I made my way directly to my private study. The heavy wall safe sat quietly behind a lovely oil painting of a coastal lighthouse, my late wife's absolute favorite piece. My weathered hands shook violently as I spun the familiar combination dial. I pulled the heavy door open. Inside was total chaos. My private documents were scattered haphazardly, obviously rifled through in a massive hurry, and the most vital ones were completely gone. The original deed to my house, my official last will and testament, several critical financial documents, all the authentic originals were simply gone. Dad, you're up awfully early. I nearly jumped straight out of my skin. Melissa stood casually in the doorway, wearing her plush pink bathrobe, her favorite ceramic coffee mug in hand, her deeply concerned daughter face firmly locked into place. Couldn't sleep, I managed to say, forcing my voice steady. Thought I'd just check on some boring paperwork at 6:00 a.m. She moved a step closer, and I instinctively pushed the heavy safe door closed. Is everything okay, Dad? Fine, just feeling a bit restless. You really should get more rest. There was that toxic phrase again. David's making fresh breakfast. Come eat something hot. I dutifully followed her into the bright kitchen, perfectly playing my assigned role. I was the doddering, confused father, the man far too old and senile to ever notice what heinous crimes were happening right under his own roof. David stood casually at the stove, expertly flipping golden pancakes. Morning, Arthur. How did you sleep? Like a baby, I lied smoothly, accepting a warm plate of food that I had absolutely no intention of digesting. They happily chatted about their busy day ahead. Melissa had several management appointments at the upscale salon where she worked. David had vague client meetings, which I now realized meant he had other innocent people to rob blind. It was a perfectly normal, boring, domestic conversation, acting exactly as if they hadn't just stolen my entire life's work while I cowered in fear in my own basement. I watched them closely. I really watched them. I noted the specific way David's cold eyes flickered over to Melissa whenever I spoke. I noticed the subtle way she touched his forearm, a silent, conspiratorial signal constantly passing between them. They were a highly coordinated team, not just a husband and wife, and certainly not a family. They were a pack of ruthless predators who had carefully selected and isolated their weakest prey. After they finally left for the day, I aggressively grabbed my cell phone with trembling fingers. I dialed Michael's private number. He answered on the very first ring. Dad, are you okay? I need to know exactly what is happening, Michael, right now. He was dead quiet for a long moment. You saw them last night, didn't you? 3 men. They aggressively took documents straight out of my safe. David literally opened the door for them. Michael, what the hell is going on? My son exhaled a long, slow breath. Dad, the FBI is deep into investigating a massive, multi-state document forgery ring. We're talking real estate fraud, completely fake deeds, stolen identities, millions of dollars missing. And David's name is plastered all over our active investigation. The kitchen spun around me. I sat down hard in the nearest chair. Late last night, we got solid wiretap intelligence that he was urgently meeting with 2 of our prime suspects, Luke Barnes and Marcus Trent. I physically couldn't get a judge to sign a warrant in time. I couldn't officially intervene without blowing the case. It's a massive conflict of interest for me because you're my father, but I absolutely couldn't let you walk into a dangerous situation blind. So, I warned you. And Dad, you need to be very, very careful now. Secretly gather evidence, but do not let them know you suspect a single thing. I will help you however I possibly can, entirely unofficially, but this specific battle is going to have to be your fight. Can you do that, Dad? Could I? I was 67 years old, bone-tired, deeply betrayed by my own flesh and blood, and robbed blind inside my own sanctuary. But I was also a man who had spent 38 years bravely walking straight into roaring fires when absolutely everyone else was sprinting away in terror. Yeah, I said finally, my voice finding its steel. Yeah, Michael, I can do that. Good. And Dad, I'm really sorry about Melissa. I know this has to be killing you inside. It was destroying me, but I couldn't afford the luxury of dying just yet. I had critical work to do. The very next morning, I became an entirely different man. It didn't happen overnight. That's never how trauma works. But that sobering phone call with Michael had permanently flipped a heavy switch somewhere deep inside my soul. The frightened, helpless old man hiding in his dark basement. He was dead and gone. Standing in his place was the hardened veteran who had spent decades mapping the chaotic origins of deadly fires. I started watching their every move, really watching. David left the house around 9:00 a.m. that morning. Meeting with important clients, he proudly announced, kissing Melissa softly on the cheek. He played the devoted husband so flawlessly. I watched him from my armchair in the living room, pretending to be deeply engrossed in the morning newspaper. The exact second his sleek car turned the corner, I was on my feet. Melissa was safely upstairs in the shower. I had exactly 10 minutes. Their master bedroom looked perfectly normal at first glance. The bed was neatly made, laundry was folded, everything was pristine. But I had thoroughly investigated enough horrific crime scenes to know that guilty people always hide things in entirely predictable places. I checked under the heavy mattress, nothing. Inside the dresser drawers, buried under clothes, hidden in jewelry boxes, nothing. Then I meticulously checked the large walk-in closet. Deep behind a neat stack of David's expensive dress shirts, carefully tucked into an old shoebox, I found the jackpot. Documents, thick stacks of copies of private bank statements. They weren't mine, they belonged to someone else. 3 different elderly people, actually. All of them boasted significant bank balances, and all of them had handwritten notes in David's distinct scrawl. Good candidate. An easy mark. I rapidly photographed every single page with my smartphone, my hands remaining perfectly steady despite my racing, furious heart. I meticulously put every single paper back exactly as I had found it. By the time Melissa finished her morning shower, I was firmly planted back in my armchair, newspaper in hand. Just another boring, uneventful Tuesday morning. "Want some more coffee, Dad?" she asked pleasantly, walking right past me into the kitchen. "No thanks, sweetheart," I replied. The word sweetheart tasted exactly like bitter ash in my mouth, but I forced a warm smile. I played my role to perfection. Over the course of the next tense week, I meticulously cataloged absolutely everything. David's criminal patterns were incredibly predictable once you knew exactly what red flags to look for. Every single Wednesday, he would spend exactly 2 hours locked inside my study with the door firmly shut, making hushed phone calls. Every Friday morning, he aggressively insisted on taking out the trash personally. He never once let me do it, meticulously controlling even the household garbage, undoubtedly destroying critical paper evidence. So I started quietly waking up an hour or dawn on Fridays, thoroughly checking the trash bags before he ever took them out. That is exactly how I uncovered the horrifying draft document that changed the entire game. It was violently crumpled at the very bottom of the kitchen trash bin, wet coffee grounds darkly staining one corner. It was a formal legal petition. I gently smoothed it out on my basement workbench, reading the dense legal jargon by the harsh light of my small desk lamp. Petition for determination of incapacity and appointment of guardian. My full name was typed boldly at the top, Arthur Pendleton, age 67. The legal petition outrageously claimed that I was actively suffering from severe, progressing dementia, that I was entirely unable to manage my own basic affairs, and that I was a physical danger to myself. It formally requested that David Vance and Melissa Pendleton Vance be immediately appointed as my permanent legal guardians, granting them total, unchecked control over my vast finances, my property, and all my medical decisions. I read the horrific document 3 separate times. With each reading, my simmering anger burned significantly hotter. The document was officially dated, but it hadn't been filed with the courts yet. It was just a working draft. They were still patiently perfecting their grand theft, making absolutely sure every minor detail was flawless before they finally sprang their lethal trap. I strongly considered confronting them right then, violently throwing the crumpled petition in their smug faces and demanding immediate answers. But that is absolutely not how you win a war. You never blindly attack when your powerful enemy fully expects it. You wait. You strategically plan. You strike with overwhelming force when they are arrogantly confident they have already won. Melissa came home from the salon late that afternoon, endlessly chattering about a particularly difficult client. I sat there, listened actively, nodded at the right intervals, and made perfectly sympathetic sounds, all while vividly thinking about that legal petition securely hidden away in my workshop. "You seem awfully quiet today, Dad," she remarked over our pasta dinner. "Is everything okay?" "Just a bit tired, honey. Getting old, I guess," I lied smoothly. David snorted dismissively. "Aren't we all? Speaking of which, Arthur, I've been meaning to have a serious talk with you about your daily medications. I really think we should schedule a comprehensive appointment with your doctor, just to make sure everything is properly optimized for someone of your specific age." Someone of your specific age. He said it as if being 67 meant I literally had one foot firmly planted in a grave. My longtime doctor constantly told me I was as healthy as a horse. "Sure, a second professional opinion never hurts," David continued smoothly. "I actually know an amazing specialist, Dr. Harrison. He is highly experienced with delicate geriatric patients." I bet he was. He was undoubtedly the exact same corrupt doctor who had agreed to blindly sign off on their fraudulent incompetency claim. "I'll certainly think about it," I said mildly. After dinner concluded, I quickly retreated to my basement workshop. I sat quietly among my ticking clocks, just listening to their rhythmic mechanisms. Time was constantly passing. Time was rapidly running out. But it wasn't running out for me. It was running out for them. I pulled out my phone and meticulously searched for aggressive family law attorneys in the greater Philadelphia area. I eventually found one with flawless, terrifying reviews, Eleanor Sterling. She specifically specialized in elder rights and complex guardianship abuse cases. Her professional website featured a stern-faced woman in her fierce 50s, possessing the exact kind of hard, unyielding eyes that clearly stated she had personally seen every dirty scam in the legal book. I called her private office and left a highly detailed message. I was brief, but very careful. "My name is Arthur Pendleton. I urgently need to discuss a fraudulent guardianship petition that is currently being prepared to be filed against me. It is a complete scam. Please call me back immediately." That very night, David and Melissa sat closely together in the living room, talking in hushed, conspiratorial voices. I stayed completely still in my dark bedroom, the wooden door cracked open just an inch so their treacherous voices easily carried down the hall. "How much longer do we wait?" Melissa asked impatiently. "Just another month or two," David confidently replied. "I've already got Dr. Harrison fully lined up. He will do the brief evaluation, happily sign off the medical paperwork stating that Arthur is legally incompetent, and then we immediately file." "But what if Michael tries to interfere?" "He won't. He's an FBI agent. He has to stay completely clean of this. It's a massive conflict of interest for him. Once we are appointed as the legal guardians, Michael literally can't do a single thing. Arthur will officially be our ward. We will totally control absolutely everything." Melissa let out a long sigh. "I do feel a bit bad sometimes, David. He is still my father." "He's an old man, Mel. He honestly doesn't need all this vast money just sitting around doing nothing. It's so much better that we take it and use it now while we're young enough to actually enjoy it. Seriously, what on earth is he going to do with $890,000 in home equity and $340,000 in liquid savings? Sit around, watch cable TV, and restore dusty old clocks? That's not really living." "I guess you're right." "I'm always right, just trust me." I forced myself to listen to that exact audio recording 5 agonizing times. Each time it played, my jaw clenched significantly tighter. Each time, my iron resolve hardened into something unbreakable. They genuinely thought I was incredibly weak, senile, an incredibly easy, pathetic mark. They were both about to learn exactly how catastrophically wrong they were. The very next day, Alina Sterling called me back. Her sharp voice was wonderfully crisp and strictly professional. "Mr. Pendleton, I received your urgent message. Can you possibly come down to my office this afternoon? I happen to have an opening at 3:00 p.m. "Yes," I said firmly. "Yes, I absolutely can." David was out running his errands. Melissa was busy at work. I quietly took the city bus downtown. I purposely didn't want to ask either of them for a ride. I wanted zero questions asked. Alina Sterling's impressive office occupied the prestigious 15th floor of a towering Center City high-rise. Through her massive floor-to-ceiling windows, you could easily see the entire sprawling city spread out below like a detailed map. She sat completely still and listened to my entire harrowing story without interrupting me once. When I finally finished, she leaned back deeply into her leather chair, her fingers steepled in thought. "Mr. Pendleton, you are currently in a highly serious, incredibly dangerous situation, but you are also remarkably lucky." "Lucky?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You found out about their scheme before they actually filed the paperwork. That crucial detail buys us vital time. Most desperate people don't even realize what is happening to them until they are already sitting in a courtroom, already losing their entire life." She pulled out a fresh yellow legal pad. "Here is exactly what we are going to do to crush them. First, you desperately need an ironclad, independent psychiatric evaluation. We need a respected professional they absolutely cannot influence or bribe. I know a phenomenal doctor, Dr. Thomas Brooks. He will properly evaluate you and legally document that you are completely, 100% competent." "Okay." "Okay." "Second, we are going to quietly change every single lock in your entire house. We will install a brand new, complex combination on your wall safe. From this moment on, they cannot have open access to absolutely anything." "They will definitely notice that," I warned her. "Let them notice." Alina smiled grimly, showing her teeth. "By the time they actually figure out what is legally happening to them, it will be far too late to stop it. Third, we immediately draft brand new legal documents. A strict new will, instantly revoking any and all previous powers of attorney you may have signed. And finally, we meticulously prepare a devastating countersuit for severe financial exploitation and elder abuse." I sat there and listened to her brilliant battle plan, feeling an incredible sensation I hadn't felt in many dark months: genuine hope. "There is just one more vital thing," Alina stated, locking eyes with me. "I desperately need you to gather concrete evidence. Secretly record their private conversations if you possibly can. Document every single interaction. Pennsylvania is legally a two-party consent state for audio recordings. However, if you are physically in your own private home, and you are an active part of the conversation, or if they clearly do not have a reasonable expectation of total privacy in the common areas, we have some significant legal flexibility to use it." I immediately thought about my expansive antique clock collection, specifically about the gorgeous piece sitting prominently on the living room mantel, a stunning antique from 1920, with a completely hollow wooden base where I could incredibly easily hide a high-tech, miniature recording device. "I can definitely do that," I promised her. Over the course of the next 2 agonizing weeks, I meticulously gathered absolutely everything I needed. The tiny recording device, which was smaller than a standard deck of playing cards, fit flawlessly inside the hollow antique clock. I discreetly activated it one quiet evening when David and Melissa were mindlessly watching television. They certainly didn't disappoint me. "We absolutely should file it next month," David said arrogantly, lazily scrolling through his smartphone. I've already ironed everything out with Dr. Harrison. He will casually see Arthur, ask him a few basic, confusing questions, and happily sign the medical paperwork declaring he's got severe dementia. Dr. Thomas Brooks's private psychiatric office was absolutely nothing like I had nervously expected. There were no sterile, intimidating white walls or horribly uncomfortable waiting room chairs. Instead, it felt exactly like walking into a warm, inviting personal study. Thousands of thick books lined the rich mahogany shelves. There was incredibly warm, ambient lighting and plush, comfortable leather furniture. It was the exact kind of soothing place where an old man could actually think with clarity. "Mr. Pendleton," he said warmly, shaking my hand with a firm grip. "Eleanor Sterling speaks extremely highly of your character. She strictly informed me that you are currently dealing with a rather difficult, complex family situation." "That is certainly one polite way to put it," I replied dryly. Over the course of the next 2 intense hours, Dr. Brooks meticulously put me through an exhaustive battery of cognitive tests. Complex memory exercises, difficult problem-solving tasks, deep questions about my daily life, my rigid habits, and my logical decision-making processes. He was incredibly thorough, highly professional, and I could easily tell he actually cared deeply about getting the scientific truth right. When we finally finished the grueling exam, he leaned back in his chair with a satisfied smile. "Mr. Pendleton, I am going to be entirely blunt with you. There is absolutely, unequivocally nothing wrong with your cognitive function. Your memory recall is truly excellent for someone half your biological age. Your logical reasoning is entirely sound. Your daily judgment is crystal clear. If anyone is actively trying to have you legally declared mentally incompetent, they are either horribly mistaken or they are maliciously lying. I'm fairly certain I know exactly which one it is." "Yes," he said quietly, his eyes filled with understanding. "I highly suspect you do." He typed up his official, glowing report right then and there, printed it on official letterhead, and signed it with a flourish. "This document should easily give you all the legal ammunition you need. If they dare try to pursue a fraudulent guardianship, this irrefutable evaluation will shut their case down immediately." I carefully tucked the thick report into my inner jacket pocket. "Thank you so much, Dr. Brooks." The professional locksmith arrived the very next morning. I had casually told David and Melissa that I would be out running errands all afternoon. It was a complete lie, but they didn't question it for a second. Instead, I patiently waited until they both left for work, then had absolutely every single lock in the entire house entirely changed. Brand new heavy-duty deadbolts, new keys, and a highly complex new safe combination. The locksmith, a gruff, heavily bearded man named Pete, worked incredibly quickly and highly efficiently. "Kicking out some lazy freeloaders?" he asked casually as he tightly screwed in the final brass deadbolt. "Something exactly like that." "Smart man. You should never let toxic people take gross advantage of you, even if they claim to be family." "Especially if they are family," I corrected him. After Pete left, I slowly walked through my quiet house, physically testing every single new lock. For the very first time in agonizing months, I genuinely felt like I truly owned my own home again. They could physically live here, sure, for now, but they absolutely did not control the territory anymore. Eleanor Sterling worked with terrifying speed. Within just 1 week, she had flawlessly prepared a massive stack of legal documents over 6 inches thick. A brand new, ironclad will. Melissa was legally slated to get exactly what strict Pennsylvania law required she inherit as a blood relative, and absolutely not a single penny more. We executed a total revocation of all previous, fraudulent powers of attorney, established a secure living trust completely protecting my vast assets, and the true piece de resistance, a powerful preliminary injunction legally preventing anyone from accessing my financial accounts without my explicit, In person, verified authorization. We will file all of this very quietly, Alina explained with a wicked smile. They absolutely won't know a thing until they try to pull something and get violently shut down by the bank. And what about their fraudulent petition? If they are stupid enough to file it, we will be more than ready. We have Dr. Brooks's bulletproof evaluation, concrete audio evidence of their financial exploitation, and devastating testimony from you about their cruel isolation tactics. Any competent judge will see straight through their lies immediately. 3 weeks after my midnight phone call from Michael, I was finally ready for war. The bank had fully frozen all joint accounts. My new will was officially filed. My psychiatric evaluation was deeply sealed and notarized. Alina Sterling had my brutal countersuit fully prepared, ready to drop the moment David and Melissa made their final move. All I had to do now was patiently wait. They noticed the strict bank freeze first. Melissa came storming home one Tuesday afternoon, absolutely furious. "Dad, there is something incredibly wrong with our joint account. The stupid bank teller says they require you to come down in person to physically authorize any cash withdrawals." I casually looked up from reading my newspaper. Oh, it must be some kind of new security thing. Identity theft is just so horribly common these days. I'll try to go down with you sometime tomorrow. "Can't you just call them on the phone right now?" she demanded. "Strict bank policy, honey," I said with an exaggerated shrug. "Has to be done entirely in person." I didn't go with her the next day, of course. I let her make the infuriating trip all by herself. I let her sit helplessly in that stuffy bank office and be sternly told that Arthur Pendleton had placed total restrictions on all financial accounts. Let her feel a tiny, agonizing fraction of the suffocating helplessness she had been maliciously inflicting on me. David frantically tried calling my doctor's office, desperately trying to schedule that fake appointment with his corrupt Dr. Harrison. But I had already spoken directly to my regular physician and fully explained the grim situation. When David called, he was politely but firmly informed that any medical appointments for Mr. Pendleton needed to be scheduled by Mr. Pendleton himself. I sat back and watched their boiling frustration build. They were rapidly losing total control, and they knew it. They just couldn't figure out why. Michael called me late one night. "Dad, how are you holding up?" "Much better than expected. I've got an amazing lawyer, Alina Sterling." "By reputation, she's an absolute shark," Michael said with respect. He paused. "Dad, I need to tell you something major. We are incredibly close to making federal arrests in the forgery case. When we finally move on David, it's going to be highly public. It will be loud. Are you truly prepared for that massive fallout?" Was I? My own daughter's husband publicly dragged away by the FBI in handcuffs. The ensuing neighborhood scandal, the deep family shame. "Yes," I said firmly, "I am absolutely prepared." "And Melissa, have you thought about what this means for her?" I had, late at night, staring blankly at the dark ceiling. I'd thought about my sweet little girl. "She made her cruel choice," I said finally, my voice devoid of emotion. "I simply cannot save her from the devastating consequences of her own horrific actions." The very next morning, I walked boldly into the kitchen where they were nervously sipping their morning coffee. I looked at both of them. I really looked at them. "I'm heading out this morning," I announced clearly. "I have a vital appointment with my lawyer." David's head snapped up violently. "A lawyer? What on earth for?" "Basic estate planning. At my advancing age, it's highly important to have everything completely in perfect order." "Dad, we've actually been meaning to talk to you about that," Melissa started, her voice dripping with fake sweetness. "I know exactly what you've been meaning to talk to me about," I interrupted, keeping my voice chillingly calm and perfectly even. "I found your draft petition, the exact one where you plan to legally declare me totally incompetent." All the color instantly drained from Melissa's shocked face. David stood up incredibly slowly. "Arthur, I can explain everything." "I am entirely sure you can. You are incredibly good at explaining things away. You're very convincing." I smiled, and it definitely didn't look friendly. "But here is the absolute truth. I am not the confused, senile old man you arrogantly think I am. I am not your easy mark. And in exactly 3 minutes I am walking out that front door. When I come back, I fully expect both of you to be completely gone." "You can't do this," David yelled. "This is my house. My name is on the original deed, the one before you tried to steal it. My locks have been changed. My bank accounts are heavily protected. And if you are not gone by the time I return, I will happily have the local police forcefully remove you for trespassing." Melissa's eyes rapidly filled with crocodile tears. "Daddy, please don't do this." The word came out like a sharp whip crack. "You do not ever get to call me that anymore. You permanently lost that privilege the very day you cruelly decided I was worth significantly more to you dead than alive." I confidently walked out, leaving them trapped in stunned, horrified silence. The game was finally over, and I was holding a royal flush. The ensuing courtroom battle smelled strongly like old polished wood and nervous, sour sweat. The tension was palpable. The hearing was officially set for a brisk Thursday morning, exactly 2 weeks after I had thrown them out onto the street. Eleanor Sterling sat confidently beside me at the defense table. Across the wide aisle, David and Melissa nervously huddled with their overwhelmed public defender. Judge Helen Carter presided over the tense proceedings. She was a stern woman in her 60s, sporting iron-gray hair and the exact kind of sharp, calculating eyes that absolutely missed nothing. "This is a formal petition for determination of incapacity," she began, reading aloud from the thick file. "Mr. Vance and Mrs. Pendleton Vance are requesting to be permanently appointed guardians of Mr. Arthur Pendleton, outrageously claiming he is entirely unable to manage his own affairs." Their frantic lawyer stood up. "Your Honor, we have several witnesses who can attest." "I'm entirely sure you do," Judge Carter cut him off dryly. "Ms. Sterling, I see you have filed a rather massive response." Eleanor stood, and the temperature in the room seemingly dropped 10 degrees. "Yes, Your Honor. A highly comprehensive response that includes a flawless independent psychiatric evaluation, concrete audio evidence of massive financial fraud, and expert testimony regarding the petitioner's true, sinister motivations." David's face went sheet white. He whispered urgently to his lawyer. When Eleanor pressed play on the crystal-clear audio recorder, David's own arrogant voice filled the silent courtroom, explicitly outlining their entire malicious scheme to steal my money and sell my beloved house. The entire courtroom went dead silent. You literally could have heard a pin drop on the carpet. "That is completely illegal. You can't record me," David screamed, shooting to his feet. "Actually," Eleanor stated calmly, "Pennsylvania is a two-party consent state, but with a massive legal exception. When secretly recorded in one's own private home, in common areas where there is absolutely no reasonable expectation of total privacy, it is perfectly, 100% legal. Everything heard here is entirely admissible." The judge looked at David and Melissa with absolute, unfiltered disgust. "Is there anything else, Miss Sterling?" "Yes, Your Honor. I'd like to officially call a surprise witness. Special Agent Michael Pendleton of the Federal Bureau of Investigation." The heavy courtroom doors swung open. Michael confidently walked in wearing his official FBI credentials. He methodically outlined David's entire, sprawling real estate forgery ring, explicitly detailing how David had handed my stolen documents to known felons Luke Barnes and Marcus Trent. David looked like a man watching his entire universe violently collapse into dust. "In that case," Judge Carter said forcefully, "this fraudulent petition is immediately denied with extreme prejudice. Furthermore, I am directly ordering a full copy of today's official transcript to be provided to the district attorney's office. Mr. Vance, I strongly suggest you retain criminal counsel immediately. She slammed her heavy wooden gavel. This hearing is adjourned. 2 weeks later, the FBI finally came for David at dawn. He was violently dragged out of a cheap, filthy motel room in handcuffs. He ended up taking a desperate plea deal, 15 hard years in a federal penitentiary with zero chance of early parole. Melissa wasn't criminally charged, but Judge Carter ordered her to pay me $75,000 in severe civil damages. I eventually sold the massive, memory-filled house and happily moved into a beautiful, secure apartment closer to Michael. I built a brand new, smaller workshop for my beloved clocks. Melissa occasionally sends me sad, apologetic postcards. I keep them in a small box, completely unanswered. Some deeply broken things can be meticulously restored with patience, but others just have to be set aside forever. My clocks happily tick around me, keeping perfect time, entirely under my control. Life moves forward, and so do I.